He honore he Claudia he maungarongo ki te mata te whenua whakaro pai ki ngā tangata katoa. Hanga e te atu he ngā kauhau ki roto ki tēnā o mātou. Whakatongia tō wairua tapu hei āwhina, hei tohu, hei ako hoki I ngā mahi mo tēnei pō, ke tonu atu, āmene. Ka tika ka mihi atu ki a tātou, ka tika ka me mihi atu ki tō tātou nei kiingi. A kiingi tu heitia, pōta tau te whero te tuawhitu. Me te kāhui ariki nui tonu, pai mārere ki a rātou. Ka tika ka mihi atu ki ngā mate, rātou e wheturangitia, haere, hoki atu rā, hoki ki tō kāinga tūturu, hoki ki te taho o koutou mātua, I o koutou tūpuna. O tira, koutou katoa kua tai mai a ipurangi nei, tēnei te tuku mihi atu ki a tātou, nō reira nau mai, whakatau mai. Tēnā tātou, ko wai tēnei, huri tēnei no Waikato, ko Ngāti Māhanga, Ngāti Haurua o ku hapu, ko te paporo te rau ko Mauro o ku marae. Ko au eti o ngā kaimahi roti te tīma taurikura, mo tēnā o ngā kaupapa arā ko Maangai Taunaki tērā. Ka pōtu te rākau ki a koe taku hoa mahi, kei a koe te wā.
Ahi Maria e te whānau, ko Kirsty toko ingoa no Papaoia hau, engari e naenei, kei whatawhata e noho ana I te rohi o Ngāti Māhanga, Ngāti Haurua. Kia ora!
Kia ora. Awesome. So welcome back to session 6 of our Maangai Taunaki series. So tonight we actually have a jam-packed kind of series for you. We actually, Sharon, if you just want to bring up the second slide. So I'll just quickly go through tonight's kaupapa with us. So tonight we've got a number of different things. So of course tonight the first things first is we have a guest speaker. So Toni Broughton, who is going to hop on with us very shortly. But again, if you have joined us for the first time this evening, so this is Maangai Taunaki, which is a kaupapa that is about creating a collective approach to one, supporting Māori candidates who are interested particularly in standing in council or local councils, and two, bringing together a collective of campaign teams and key champions within our communities to support them, Māori candidates to stand in the up and coming local elections. Again, if you are joining us for the first time this evening, you can visit us on our Facebook page, which is Taurikura New Zealand, which is on Facebook, or also on Facebook and Instagram. And then, of course, Mana Tangata, Mana Maangai. And then now for a little while now, all of these live streams are all recorded and they are accessible to you via our YouTube channel. So please feel free to go and check us out on there if you want to go and have a look at some of the previous series. Kapai, next slide. So look, this is our kaupapa, anei ngā whakaritinga mo te pōnei. So of course later on we're going to have the opportunity to listen to our guest speaker, so Toni Broughton. She's from the Whakatane District Council. There'll be an opportunity for both ourselves and you, those who are joining us live this evening, to ask Toni any pātai. And then if you have joined us previously, or if you may have heard Kirsty this morning share on Radio Live, on Tainui Live, we were fortunate enough to attend the local government New Zealand conference down in Papaoia a week or two ago. So we're actually going to recap and share some of those gems with you this evening. And then, of course, most of us, if you haven't already, have submitted your nomination forms. Please make sure you submit those because nominations close on the 12th of August. But we're going to recap and touch on some of our previous slides that we've talked about in Maangai Taunaki, especially for those who are looking to stand in local elections. And then we have an up-and-coming event that we want to share with you tonight, which will be launched on the 16th of August. And then we'll wrap up later on this evening around about 8:25, 8:30. Ka pai, next slide. All right, so without no further ado, I want to introduce you to Toni Boynton. She's of Ngai Tūhoi and Ngāti Awa descent. She is now the candidate for the Kapu Maaori Ward. So Toni was actually raised in beautiful Whakatane and is a single mother of 4 sons. She's currently the community board member on the Taniatua Community Board. And Toni actually was instrumental in standing for the Kapu Maaori Ward. Oh no, sorry, she is standing for the Kapu Maaori Ward for the Whakatane District Council. But she led and was a champion for Te Rōpū Tautoko Māori, which led a hikoi back in 2018. Her strengths include being able to work with multiple groups to seek positive outcomes for everyone. She hopes to bring others along with her, and they will see that being on council is something everyone can aspire to. Without no further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, who I've had the privilege to actually work alongside, and also as a result of us attending the Local Government New Zealand conference last week, Toni Broughton. Tēnā koe te tuahine kei a koe te wā.
Kia ora koutou katoa. He mihi atu kia koutou I tēnei po, he mihi atu kia koe kawe mō tō karake I tēnei po, ki te atua koe e te timata me te mutuna. He mihi atu ki Waikato Tainui me Tauri Kura, ki te tautoko te kaupapa o a tātou tanata kei te tū I roto I te kaunihira o te motu. He mihi atu kia koutou. Haere atu rā nā mate I runa I a tātou marae I tēnei wai, I tēnei wiki, I tēnei marama. Haere atu rā. Just really want to say a big mihi to you all for allowing me to come onto the show. Unfortunately, I can't hear anybody but kei te pai. I'm just asking if anyone can hear me. So everyone can hear me? Okay, kei te pai. So I've come on to the show just to have a kōrero. Obviously, Kawe would have introduced me I te taha taku pāpā, ko mana poatu te mauna, ko tauranga roa, te awa, ko tuapo me tawanui nā marae, ko te whakatāne me tamakaimuana, nā hapu, ko tūhoi te iwi, I te taha taku pāpā anō, ko warahoi te hapu, ko warahoi te marae, ko warahoi te tanata, ko nā te awa te iwi. I te tahu taku māma, ko whangatautia te mauna, ko kāriri kura, te awa, te moana, ko roma te marae, ko te patu kirikiri te hapu, ko te rarawa te iwi. Kia ora koutou. So I suppose I'm just going to kōrero about the journey of Māori wards in Whakatane. So that's been a kaupapa that our whole community has worked hard for over the last 5 years, since 2017. And so it was really great to see last year the legislation change. We were part of pushing for that change, working with people like Action Station to be able to gather 11,000 signatures to give the petition to the government so that we could support the change of the legislation, or to remove a part of the legislation that was a barrier to Māori wards being established. And so with that, it's been great to see that all know that 34, I think it is, councils have supported the establishment of Māori wards in their rohe. and that we're going to see these Māori candidates come through. And I think it's very much needed with what we are dealing with at the moment, with climate change, with our environment, also looking towards the other parts that local government will be looking at, which is the four well-beings, and being able to utilise Māori whakaaro and way of thinking and values to enable those things that we live and breathe already to be part of the decisions that are made at local government. Some people ask me, why do we do this? Why did we push for Māori to have a voice at the table and that? And one of the things back 5 years ago was that I took it to our hapuhui. So I took the kaupapa to our hapuhui to talk about being able for our people to have a voice at the decision making, and that understanding that even though the government seems like local government or council always seems like this group of people that's over there making decisions that we seem to sort of always moan about, that we need to be able to make sure that we are at the decision making table, and that we understand that there's been a lot of mamai and reason why our whānau don't engage as much in the system, particularly in local government and also with central government, because of the past histories and injustices that we've suffered. So, there's two sides of it. You've got a group of people within Aotearoa who have learned the benefits of knowing the system or the political system in central government and also in local government. So of course they pass on that kōrero and knowledge onto their tamariki and their families, because it's a tool that they can utilise and it has benefits for them, and it's a system they know well because it's a system that basically was established with them in mind. Whereas our whānau have intergenerational trauma over the decisions that were made, but also too knowing that some of those decisions weren't tika, and took away a lot from our whānau, and we still see the repercussions of those decisions now. And now presently in our communities, we can see it if we go into one part of a community, how that part might have 2 footpaths and lots of lights, and then we go down to our other side of the community and they might be lucky to have 1 footpath or a light, and so you see the disparities in the decision making, and also the lack of that whakaaro that reflects our way of thinking in that space. And so one of the reasons for being able to push for that voice was to be able to make sure that our tamariki and our people were able to see themselves reflected in that leadership, in that council, see the values that they hold and identify and be reflected in the decision making. And it was really making sure that our tamariki see themselves reflected in the leadership of their community, and also so that they know if they look at a decision that's being made, that they can relate to the value or why that decision was made, because it's made from a whakaaro that they think. And if they can see themselves in that, then that becomes normal. It becomes, it just translates to them a lot easier. And it's ensuring that our whānau have value. Of course, there's lots of other decisions and things that happen within council, but I also see it as a space where we decolonise the space with our presence when we are in that room. I've had a lot of whānau go, oh, don't get in there because you'll get too colonised and stuff like that. And for me, the whakaaro is different. We changed the whakaaro because we decolonise the space. It's not the other way around. We're in a time now where there's more people, wider people, not just Māori, who know of the injustices that have happened in our country, but also with New Zealand histories being taught in schools. We can feel more confident in knowing that we have a generation who understands our past and therefore can understand how Māori think, and also too how it benefits not just Māori but everyone. So I see some questions there. Hapatai, how do you deal with racism in council hui? You know, one of the things that happened when we had we had 20 people submit last year when it came to the decision to establish Māori wards. And out of those 20 presenters, there were probably 2 who were against. And, you know, one was an old Pākehā man, and he was so mad, he was just going bright red, and he was shaking his toko and his thing, and how saying that Māori wards was racist, and it was really ugly, it was really nasty. But then when he got up to go, because he was so angry, he sort of went off. And one of our rangatira of one of our tribes, because we have 7 in our rohe, he went up and got that man's walking stick and went up to him to give it to him. And, you know, to make sure that he didn't fall over and make sure that he got out of the room all right. And I think it's through our actions of being ourselves, it's through our actions of our values that are the best responses. And that action, when everyone saw it, it was just like, you know, we can agree to disagree, and it's within our culture that somebody can have a different opinion and kei te pai, that's the kaupapa that's on the table. But when it comes to our values of humanity and how we look after each other, then that's a different thing. So that was really humbling. Why would you recommend getting on your local community board? What can you achieve? What are the benefits? I started on a community board, so I had a term on the Taneatua community board, and I think the benefits there is that you get to understand how council works, how their meetings run. It was really hard case. So I've been on my tribal for the past 10 years and the hapu delegate, and our hapu huis, I mean, some of them can go for hours. And they're really hard out. I mean, it's like the days of our lives. You will see everything happen all in 1 week. And then we all go have a feed together, whether someone cried, laughed, or whatever. But, you know, that's just Māori. And so I went to my first meeting and I was, you know, really nervous and everything. There was all these sort of rules and things about, you know, what you call the chair and everything else like that. And then I thought they were going for like a cup of tea break because it seemed like about 20 minutes. And I thought, oh, are we just having a break? And they said, no, that's it. That's the meeting. And I was blown away. I was like, what? That's the meeting? That's the meeting for the community board? And that doesn't mean that happens to every community board, but I think that as Māori, we sort of underestimate the level of meeting skills we actually have, because we deal with it every day. And like one of the things one of our aunties said was like, oh, we're not political, you know. But when one of the nannies comes out at the marae committee hui and says there's 3 teaspoons missing, you know, and it's a real big take, I mean, that's political, because even though it's 3 teaspoons, it's about making sure that we manaaki the best that we can when we're hosting. So whether we like it or not, when we're involved in participating in Māori activities and our maraes and hapus and that, we're already political and we already have political skills. So what are the kinds of commitments that are required for sitting in election roles on councils? Can anyone give it a go? It would be great to see more diverse folk on local ones for sure, not just retired and business people. I think also too, when it comes to local community boards, there's pūtea on some of these boards. You know, the community boards are part of translating to local communities on the ground what kaupapa are happening, but also to back the other way round. So there's a lot of kaupapa that our hapus and our maraes and that do, and they sort of do it themselves. You know, they don't realise that they can access certain resources within council to tautoko their kaupapa. And I think the way that local government is set up, of course, has been for really people who have a lot of pūtea, who are probably retired, but we need that part to change. The only way we can do that is if we see more whānau within our local government, if we see more of our ranatahi, if we see more of our diverse communities participating in these spaces. What do you believe will be the biggest impacts of Māori wards in local government? What I think it will. I think that one of the biggest impacts, I think, will be that this fear that a lot of people are drumming up about Māori wards and everything else like that will dissipate, and that the contribution that will happen, the better relationships that will happen locally on the ground, and the action that can happen, because for Māori, it's not necessarily about our economic capital. It's really about our social capital, because of our networks and our ability to motivate, to mobilise, and to get behind kaupapa, particularly when we're having all these changes happen in local government. So I think the biggest impact will be a positive one. And I think it'll be a surprise to those who keep on thinking it's going to be a bad thing. We've had Māori wards for nearly 20 years in Bay Plenty Regional Council, and the sky did not fall down. In fact, there are people who submitted against Māori wards for the establishment of Bay Plenty Regional Council Māori wards, who now said it's one of the greatest things. So, yeah, I think it's going to be awesome. Would you recommend doing some groundwork in your iwi political spaces as a good way to build confidence and resilience? Definitely. I think that if you and this is a like in legislation, it doesn't say that if you're going to stand in a Māori ward, then you better go to your marae and your hapu and make sure you've got your hapu support or anything else like that. You know, you can just fill out the paper and chuck it in. You know, and that's entirely up to you, and that's Kate the Pie as well. But there are, if you've been in that space, you know the political ramifications, I guess, but also too that's part of the tekana that goes with being able to take on that role, is that it is about the people knowing and acknowledging and supporting you, which was the same thing with Māori wards, because it wasn't about one person. It's about our own people on the ground, our own whānau, knowing what you're about and knowing that they can support you throughout those levels. So for myself, I went to my hapu, of course, my marae meeting, my hapu meeting, then my tribal, and then of course I went to Ngāti Awa and also Ngāti Awa hapu within the ward that I'm standing in, because it's just part of that respect. Because if you're going to be a representative, it's not saying you are Maangai for that particular hapu or for that iwi, but it's ensuring that you have the courtesy and respect within Te Ao Māori to be able to be humble and make sure that you are doing things the right way as best as you can. What do you believe are the issues whānau hapu should get behind in these 2022 local body elections? I think, you know, the big conversation around why our water has always been something that we have fought for, in a sense, and it's something that's really relevant here in Whakatane because of what happened with Otakiri. and there's been decisions made around wahi tapu for development and things like that, that you know, were done a few years ago, where you thought, well, if you really had whānau who were in that space at that time, would those decisions have gone ahead? So I think that there's local issues, and it's also to understanding that for Māori is to make sure that our councils understand what relationship means, and may mean something quite different to how they see that. It's not just about a relationship on a piece of paper to say, oh, we have a relationship. The relationship is in the doing of the mahi together, and in the doing of the mahi and sharing power, and also resource in the doing of the mahi, not just collecting our voice and then taking our voice away to make up something else. Kia ora.
Kapai, I'm hoping you can hear us. Can you hear us, Toni?
I can't hear anybody, so
okay.
Thank you
That's
very
okay.
much for your time, whānau.
Kapai. Tēnā tātou. Look, firstly, I just want to really acknowledge you, Toni. Actually, one, for both kind of sharing your story, but also your extensive kind of kōrero and gems.
What do you see happening in the papakainga space for whānau? Are councils being more supportive? I think with the RMA reforms, that's going to be a big part of it. We really hope that it's going to be a big part of changing parts of legislation. There's so many pieces of legislation being changed to enable it not to have so much red tape. But we've got some amazing products out there from the government to enable and support Māori housing development, particularly on our own whenua and particularly in papakainga. And our cousins over in Whānau Apanui and Opotiki Council have been doing some really awesome stuff about working with iwi to be able to make the process a lot easier for their housing developments. And they're doing some really amazing mahi. And I hope that that will translate. I think one of the greatest assets we have being Māori is that usually we have some whānau in other councils. so if someone's doing something pretty awesome, then we're going to go, hey, guys, how are you guys doing that over there? And how can we, make something work wherever we are? And I think that's the difference when you're having Māori, and we've got groups like Te Maruata that allow us to connect with each other as whānau. And therefore, when we're looking at other councils, we see them as whānau too, because we'll have some whānau or friends that we've connected to in those spaces, because it's not about eco. It's really about being in service of our people. And I think if you have that whakaaro and that is part of your being, and you have a love for your people, no matter how much they might stress you out, and no matter how much they might tear you down at a hui, the thing is that I suppose one of my aunties taught me that it might be a harsh way of learning when it comes to a hapu political space, but it also is another way of love. That might sound hard, but it's basically like preparing you, because there's no one that's more harder than you than your own. And if you can handle that and you can take it in the fact that it builds you to be stronger, then yeah, it's go for it. Our greatest power, whānau, our greatest superpower is that we are Māori. And we walk in both worlds. Once we know the rules of the game or how things work, like in places like council, we're really innovative and we're really dynamic in how we can make change in a positive way that is mana enhancing, not just for our own people, but for everyone and everything. I can't hear anybody, so I'm just not sure if it's if my kōrero's over, but I've probably taken up too much time.
You absolutely haven't. We could listen to you all day. I mean, that's amazing. And like you told us, Toni, I know I'm not talking to you.
Is there anything else, whānau? So thank you.
But thank you so much. The things the tikanga, the humaria, and like you say, 200 years of learning to be resilient, of living with your own and being tautoko. Oh, she's off now. Okay, thank you so much. Well, and don't forget on our YouTube channel, you'll be able to re-listen to that. We've sadly had technical difficulties, but it didn't stop the wonderful performance you gave. I'm going to really hang on to that about social capital, and I think that's absolutely correct, just how much social capital Māori have, and it's that advantage. And like you said, it's the superpower Te Ao Māori has. It might be tough sometimes, it might be Nanny's spoon on the head, but they've got your back at the end. Look here. Well, that's sad. I don't know if it's the meteor shower, but we had tech problems this morning with our Tainui Live interview as well. So there's something going on in the universe. Hey, just a quick reminder. Nominations close next Friday the 12th. So as you heard from Toni, just get in on your community boards. Democracy only works if we all get involved. So if you think council's a bit of a too big a step, get in on your community boards. Let's just get as many people who look like you in these spaces as possible, because as Nanaya was telling us last week, there are big complex decisions, and Toni mentioned as well, Te Manawatu Wai, huge. I mean, water is the gold of now and of the future, and we can't waste it. We have to look after it. We have to make sure it's available for all, of our communities. And sadly, as we know, when they put in great big intensive dairy farms down one end of the awa, it's the wai, Te Punawai at the marae, which suddenly dry up. These things are huge and important, and the time to act is now. As Toni said, and Tippa said before her too, man, if you've ever been on a marae committee, you're ready for this. There is so much experience Māori have had over the last 200 years of going to battle, winning battles. The history of treaty legislation isn't because Māori lost on the courts, it's because they kept winning. So the goalposts kept having to change. So, come on, let's just everybody get involved and change those spaces so that they are welcoming, so that the racists are not, that they're not the voices, they're not the squeaky wheels that get heard. And what an amazing, gracious, generous way to respond to someone like that, the kaumātua who goes to make sure that the old gentleman is all right. And we heard that from the Naya in Papaoia as well, when someone asked her what it's been like for her, and we all know just how awful it's been. But she was just so gracious and so generous and so healing in the way she responded to that, and how carrying that mamae was not going to be something that would help people move forward. And like Toni said, once people actually get over themselves, these spaces are really, really effective. As she said, Bay of Plenty, Waikato Regional Council, they've all had Māori wards for like years, and it's been brilliant. Just a reminder that every council, if you're going to stand, we've got the packs. Get on our mailing list. We can send you everything. We're notorious for collecting resources. But the rules will be different, slightly different for every campaign. We can help you break those down. It's not actually that big a deal. Just get your forms in before Friday. Like I said, at the bottom here, the actual local government NZ Vote Local 2022 site is really, really useful and helpful. Thanks, Sharon. Next one. Thanks. So these are just some reminders about campaigning. Many of these council websites have webinars or similar online support for candidates. They're not all equal. Some of them are terrible, but some of them are good. So and you'd be surprised. Often it's the smaller councils who've done a much richer job of communicating with candidates and genuinely getting and trying to get them there and creating pathways to candidates rather than barriers. But go and have a look. Your local council website will have lots of useful info. Remember, there's been changes to requirements, especially for our Māori kura, because they were getting harassed because their physical addresses were up there. And we saw this sadly with the young Nats, and they've just done it again up north. They come out and they start being really sexist as well as racist, and they do online harassment and bullying. So you no longer have to put your physical address on your campaign materials, just an email address. The electoral rolls are out. So you can definitely see these are designated council officers. That's in our case, that'll include Raglan, Tamahere, Ngarawahia, and somewhere else too, sorry, can't remember. Also, what you'll notice is that all the councils, and it's a legal requirement, so they need to be there by now, they have pre-election reports. So that will tell you how council has framed up the issues that they've faced over the last 3 years, the issues they see on the horizon, and what they've been doing. So in terms of getting that kind of understanding of your community and your voters, those are really good things to go to, and they're a legal requirement, so your council must have one. It'll give you a really good insight into at least their perspective on what the issues are for the communities. Okay, Koe, I think it's you now.
Kapai. Oh, okay. I have been seeing a couple of questions. Jacqueline, we will come to, I think, the last one. I think the other question, the question you had beforehand was whether or not that we have any printing company, cheap printing anywhere. Yes, we do. So you are on our mailing list, so we'll make sure we'll come back to you on that one. But look, just quickly, I want to, as I mentioned earlier on in the piece, as part of the introduction, myself and Kirsty attended the LGNZ conference in Papaoia or Palmerston North about a week or so ago, and had the absolute honour and privilege of working along some key people. But there were a number of launches and kaupapa that were spoken about at the conference. So in particular, this one here, so Te Maru Ataropu Whakahaere. So they're actually a subcommittee, but a Māori subcommittee under the National Council of Local Government in New Zealand. And basically what Te Maru Ataropu Whakahaere's role is one, to support representatives who are in council, so councillors, Māori councillors who are in council, to help to increase participation and a whole bunch of other things. But basically we had some kind of key things, kaupapa, that dropped out of the conference. So one was the launch of Te Ahuru Māori. So in its simplest form, Te Ahuru Mōwai. In its simplest form, Te Ahuru Mōwai really is a tuakana / Taina program that they'll be launching to support councillors. So often what is experienced for emerging or incoming councillors, as we mentioned, kind of racism, but also trying to navigate the mayhem or the system of being an elected member. So the hope really of one of the hopes of Te Ahuru Mōwai will be to support councillors and pairing them with tuakana, so incumbents, other Māori incumbents who have been elected, to support them whilst in council. As well as that, there was a launch of the LGNZ induction program. So Bridget Sissons talked a little bit about that as part of the conference. But we are going to put some concise messaging and hope to send this out to our email database and just share some of the whakaaro, but also some of the key messages that came out of the conference. And we'll specifically send out some more information about Te Ahuru Mōwai and, of course, the induction program, which we hope to kind of see some more of our Māori candidates who are standing, then be elected into these positions. So, yeah, I think that's us. So next slide, please. I think this one's you. Hey, Kirsty.
That's me.
Yep.
Cool. So we've just got a couple of little video clips that come as Stuart Crosby, who's the chair of LGNZ, said, and many, it was echoed a lot of times, especially by the young elected members and things. And on that previous slide, as Koe pointed out, what we're really, and what Toni said, what we're committed to is legacy changes, to mokopuna decisions. It's not just about 3 years. It's about having people in there who are going to make the changes we need to make because the cost of inaction is too high. So as they said, the future is now, and are we bold and brave enough to create it? So can you just roll that little video clip, please, Sharon? Nope. So this little video, when we get there, is about the review of the role of local government generally.
Our natural environment is under pressure, and we are facing many challenges that impact both the natural environment and how we live and develop within it. The Resource Management Act was created in 1991. It has neither sufficiently protected the environment for future generations nor achieved good outcomes for our urban areas. That's why the 1991 Act is being repealed and new laws will be enacted. The new laws are an opportunity to improve the quality of the natural environment, improve housing supply and development within environmental limits, and improve outcomes for towns and cities. They are intended to simplify and speed up planning processes and reduce costs by improving system efficiency and effectiveness. They will also provide a more effective role for Māori, giving greater recognition to Te Ao Māori and Te Tiriti o Waitangi. The Natural and Built Environments Act will be the primary replacement to the Resource Management Act. It sets out a framework for land use and how we protect the environment. The Strategic Planning Act will set long-term strategic outcomes around how we use land and coastal marine areas through regional spatial plans. The legislation will also respond to how we adapt to climate change. The new laws will work together to allow us to continue to grow and flourish while protecting both our environment and the well-being of our future generations. Share your view on the new resource management system or find out more now.
Kia ora. Look, honestly, it must be the meteor showers that we're having or something. We had so many technical glitches. So that wasn't quite the video we were going to show at that point. That one comes a bit later when we talk about the resource management reform. Just while Sharon's trying to sort it out, and we'll see if we can get that there was a glitch. The review into the future of local government is really important because what it's saying is people like Toni who are coming on these councils, people like Whakatane in the far north, all of these people, these wonderful candidates, how do we actually strengthen those community voices, strengthen Māori voices, and what is the role of local government, especially with reference to its relationship to central government? You may be aware that the funding model is very much in favour of central and not in favour of local. But if we want solutions of place, in other words, communities have strengths and skills and ideas and solutions. They don't need to be told or dictated to by either central government or their local councils. So we want, and what the future of local government is looking at is how do you strengthen that local voice for the unique context that each community has while providing enough guidance and resourcing to make sure they can make things happen. So there's lots of things in that review, and we'll have the video at some point, but maybe we can just move to the next slide. Cool. Look, and the wonderful Nanaia Mahuta spoke once to Te Maruata, so we were privileged to have her speak twice because she also spoke to the main conference. So as she kept repeating, we have deep, complex challenges ahead of us, and the decisions we make, the legacy decisions, are about holding the space so that we don't wreck everything for the next generation coming through. We have amazing young leaders, but we need to be making decisions now that are aware of what it's going to be like in 40 years' time. So a couple of gems, as Kapu referred to, that came out of her kōrero. The future is about our people, our planet, our place, and our prosperity. And it's a shared one. And that's what I think is amazing, again, about I've been privileged to be in Te Ao Māori. You know, that comes naturally. Like Toni said, that's the values. That's what's good for Māori is good for the world. These are the values that Te Ao Māori brings for shared solutions for all of us going forward. The other thing she said, which really appealed to me, was we need hindsight, we need foresight, and we need the insight to respond to complex challenges. She may not be the most busy, but she's fantastic. She's got so much intelligent, thoughtful commentary to make. So apparently we've got our video to go now. This isn't as inspiring as Nanaia, but it'll give you a sense of the local government reform and why we need it.
Ha paitia te ara te kapumau, ai te rangatiratanga mō ngā uri whakatipu.
Local government touches all of our lives, all of the time. From roads and cycleways to get to school or work, to events and cultural celebrations, to public transport, parks and libraries, to environmental issues and much more. Over the next 30 years, New Zealand will face massive challenges, impacting all aspects of our lives. Population growth will put pressure on housing. Technology will change how we work. Climate change will reshape how we live, and we'll continue to be threatened by pandemics, recessions, biodiversity loss, and more. For our tamariki to inherit a country that is prosperous and thriving, our communities need to be empowered so they can deal with these challenges. But they need support from local government. That's where we come in. We are the review into the future for local government. Our purpose is to take an independent look at local democracy to see how it needs to respond and adapt to the changing conditions of the future. We understand all communities across Aotearoa have their own strengths and challenges, and we understand there's no one-size-fits-all approach to local government. So, to make informed and meaningful recommendations, we've sought out voices from across the motu. We've engaged with national committees and local communities, change makers and policy shapers, iwi, hapu and Māori experts. From whangarei to the Chathams, we've spoken to councils, boards and delegates. From the beehive to the farm, we've heard from ministries, businesses and experts. We've even looked overseas for examples and ideas. We've listened to these voices and they've asked challenging questions such as,
how can the public find out what local government actually does and the value it has on their lives?
What roles and functions are meaningful for iwi and hapu?
And how else could councils work with mana whenua?
When should we start using digital platforms for voting?
Should councillors have compulsory ongoing cultural training?
How will we reflect te tiriti in council decisions?
And the voice of mana whenua and papatua nuku.
How could a youth perspective be reflected in local decision making? Should the voting age be lowered to 16?
What should the council's role be in addressing climate change and social and economic inequity?
How can local government work more closely with central government?
And is the current way local government is funded and structured sustainable?
These are some of the big questions that matter most to our people. And these are some of the big challenges local government will need to address. By asking these questions now, we can reshape the future of local government so it can empower all of our communities across Aotearoa. From October, formal submissions and feedback on our draft report and recommendations will be open. Visit futureforlocalgovernment.govt.nz for more information.
Toi tū te marae o tāne. Toi tū te marae o Tangaroa. Toi tū te iwi.
Kia ora. Next slide, please, Sharon.
Kapai. Yeah, and look, just quickly, so the key theme or the key message that kind of ran across the conference was Te Wāheke Mai. And we just briefly want to share with you, I guess, some of the key notes or key gems that came out of it. So Penny Hulse, so we need to rethink how local government facilitates democracy, not just delivers it. And that's a subtle but critical change. And I mean, over the course of these 6 series, we've often talked about actually the unique perspective and lens that Māori will bring to local council and the reason why Māori need to be a part of the discussion, but more so around setting the agenda. And so part of what I got out of that particular kōrero was about, was merely that really, was around actually, if we want, and what often we refer to tipa, you know, it's about working with us, talking with us, not about us. And too often that is often the experience that we have across local and regional government. But of course, this year now with the introduction of Māori wards, and actually 32 now, I think, councils have adopted Māori wards, we're going to see a massive influence as to how both, our democratic processes will work, but also the benefits of what it will mean for Māori to be able to set the agenda. Of course, we often kind of refer to Moko, and Moko often kind of drops some really key messages, but for him, the concept of whanaungatanga is about finding common ground and the importance of adopting this concept in politics to move forward. And so what I loved about this particular analogy is that in this kaupapa, he used some examples of how that's been applied in his council and in the way that kind of he conducts and they conduct business within the council. Modern leadership involves sharing information, creating a high level of trust, and promoting a sense of inclusion, belonging, and decision processes. And that was from Stuart Crosby. I can't remember where Stuart Crosby's from now. Oh, actually, no, he's part of Local Government New Zealand, Kirsty?
He's the chair of Local Government New Zealand.
Yes. But I want to draw a little bit by from what Toni shared earlier, and really liked what she said about, particularly when we look at leadership, but, and whānau challenging her around coming into council. And for us, and saying to her, look, you don't want to go in there because you don't want to be colonised. But for her, what she said and what I really drew from her kōrero was actually it's an opportunity for us to decolonise those spaces, as a point that I actually really liked from her. And more to the point of what Moko was saying, that it's actually through our actions of being ourselves and through our actions of our values is how we can make a real difference and an impact in council. So it was really cool to kind of draw from some of her kōrero this evening. All right, next slide.
And just to follow on what Koe said too, and just in echoing what Toni said as well, that high level of trust, like she said, there have been Māori wards in 3 regional councils for years and the sky didn't fall in. So when people are in the same room, that trust builds because people see how effective. The rangahau we did that underpins this project, we had even Pākehā councillors talk about their experiences of joint management and co-governance arrangements. And of course, not only does the sky not fall in, but great achievements and outcomes are created. So, yeah, and I've got plenty of resources. Just get on our mailing list and I'll send you some if you like. Readable ones, not wanky academic ones. Hey, so the people in charge of the Local Government Commission, we'll just whip through this, but just to get a sense of the way the thinking in the sector is going. So the Local Government Commission are the ones who are in charge of reforming the Local Government Act, and we saw that little video before. But these are the kind of key shifts, and like Koe pointed out, and Toni too, they might only be small, but they're critical changes in thinking, they're critical changes in narratives. So the first one is strengthening local democracy, so not having everything from Central. And Penny Hulse, who runs a brilliant website and a brilliant organisation called Inspiring Communities, and they were very much around that. There's so much skill and talent and ideas and strengths and solutions actually in communities. It's just so far beyond the stage where council should be telling people what to do instead of exploring the innovation that's available, and particularly the innovation that's available in Te Ao Māori. And yeah, this one comes through long, strong and clear. The commitment to having authentic relationships, high trust relationships with hapu iwi Māori. And that's recognising that mana whenua or tangata whenua are a matter of place, that the narratives are not global, that you need to actually get there and talk to the people, that the ways of making sense of anything are not just academic ways, they're about the stories from the people in this place. So there was a lot of reference to placemaking in our at the conference, and for Māori, of course, that's particularly necessary. Absolutely, the stronger focus on well-being, that how do we measure social impacts, how do we measure social outcomes, how do we measure well-being, and how do we ensure that everybody is thriving. And there's some really good practical strategic ideas for how to do that. In previous live streams, we've talked about the 4 well-beings, which is the framework. So that's social, cultural, environmental, and economic. And of course, we all know that those things are interrelated. So looking through the lens of well-being at all the decisions that local government makes. This is a big one from a practical point of view, but it's going to have really strong implications for every community and for local councils and community boards, having a genuine partnership. Maybe to a container in terms of funding, but not in terms of solution generation. And yeah, so it comes down to that more equitable funding. Someone said at the conference at the moment it's 90-10. So councils have huge demands on them, but they're expected to fund that to the tune of 90%, which of course is really tricky for ratepayers and other people who are, especially in smaller rural communities. This was a big one, and it was finally people starting to understand that you have to go out to the people, that the language, the nuance, the difference, the narratives are different. Toni comes from down Whakatane way. We're up here in Waikato Tainui. I'm married into Tūranganui Akiwa. So the narratives, the languaging, everything is different. You can't just put a blanket language. So it's governments and local government need to understand that. They need to come out to the people and be in that world of experience and listen to the way the meaning is made in that space. And absolutely, it needs to be transformational rather than tinkering. And this is again where Māori, I think, are in such a great position because they already have a worldview that is transformational. So we can get genuine change if we reconstruct rather than just restructure what already is. Okay, Chloe, I think it's you now.
Oh, am I on?
Yep.
Yes, okay. Oh gosh, all the technical issues tonight. So we had the opportunity also to listen to Melissa Clark-Reynolds, who, in want of a better word, I just called her a futurist, but actually she had many accolades beside her name. But this here kind of just shows about, I guess, the space that she kind of works in, and basically what it was really kind of just giving us a picture of some of the things that is likely to happen. She set the scene really by kind of showing maybe in the early 2000s what the reality was for us at that point. And I think she shared with us that, like block little cell phones that we used to have. I think that's Cosmopolitan magazine, and then kind of brought us forward to today to kind of give us a clear picture of as to, back then, did we ever think that some of the things that we are doing now, i.e. the reliance on technology, actually it's probably moved a lot more away from just reliance, but actually the need for us to have our mobiles and all those kind of things. And so she kind of painted the picture for us as to trying to understand the environment that she constantly operates in, a means of trying to forecast or understand what the future trends might look like. But the reason for this is I want to just quickly touch on, I guess, some of the key things that came out of her presentation. So one of them, obviously, is that the future of our youth, or actually even more so, not just youth, but the future of New Zealand is going to be Māori. And she even went so far to saying that Pākehā are going to be the minority, and I know many of you on here tonight probably already know that, but she made that really clear as to saying that Pākehā, that will have a large amount of Pacifica, Asian population, but that Pākehā will be the minority. And so if councils, if government, if society haven't moved towards being more of an inclusive, understanding society around te tiriti and the like, then you're gonna miss the boat. And so it was really cool to kind of hear from her perspective. I'll give her perspective on that. I'm actually just going to quickly read from some of my notes that I took. Also, she touched on a little bit around food scale, so the challenges around biodiversity and the reliance on kind of food, and what are the impacts of that it's going to have on us as populations grow. How is our food security? How or if are we going to be able to scale up those so that we can provide food to our communities, to our whānau. Touched on also a little bit about the gig economy. So the gig economy being, now what was more prevalent is people kind of having full-time, part-time, full-time roles, whereas now the trend is more so moving away from that. And now we've got people who are kind of contractors who are doing multiple different contracts, multiple different jobs. And actually, what might the impacts be on employment, on workforce development and the like. And again, back to the point around the future as Māori, the bottom line is that Pākehā are an aging population. And when you look at the population statistics, specifically on Māori are still very, very young. And so what decisions at a local level do we need to make for those who are looking to stay in the council? What are the impacts of the decisions that you need to make once or if you're elected into council? Some of the other things that they talked about was like, hang on, you can't really see on that slide, can you? Can you share some of those speakers' names so we can perhaps draw some inspiration from some of their statements? Yes, we can. I mean, on here, or no, we can share them. We'll send them out to you, Moko, via email. And again, for those of you who aren't connected to us on our email list, please feel free to reach out to us and just comment on these links, and we will hope to kind of get back to you. But yeah, look, I probably largely done a massive injustice to this particular slide. And the biggest one is obviously making mokopuna decisions. So the decisions we make, what impact are those going to have on the future generations? And for us as Māori, we're more connected to that if we understand, because we're an intergenerational type of people, and we operate intergenerationally. We then become more accountable when we understand the impacts of the decisions that we make and what that'll have on our mokopuna. But also, I think the point that that Nanaia made is actually, what impact will it have on our ancestors? So for a lot of our tupuna, they've fought the hard fight to kind of get to where we are. So just making sure that the decisions that we're making not only benefiting those of the future, but that it is maintaining what those of our, that our tupuna have held and fought for us in the past. Kapai, next slide.
Kia ora. So for all of you potential candidates out there, of course, there are some issues that are going to get raised that would be really good to have some talking points for yourselves. Like I said, we've got tons of really good little resources that can just help you get your head around this. We're probably all aware of all the misinformation that's downright racist at the bottom of it, and poor old Nanaia, of course, has warned so much of that. The thing about Three Waters is, of course, it is about actually having end-to-end oversight and te mana o te wai, treating water like the taonga it is, and it's not there for exploitation and greed. We've got to get rid of this individualism around that and recognise things as a shared resource that we all need to look after. So here are some key facts, about the Three Waters reform. Its water assets will always stay. So one of the big keys to it is to not allow it to become privatised. And you only have to look down the road. For us, we have, the name escapes me now. The Pākehā name is called the Blue Springs, just out of Putararu. But that 60 billion litres are proposed to be put into single-use plastic bottles and sent off to China. I know some over in the Bay of Plenty, Tony, if you're still with us, same, old Judith Collins' husband. So, water is already being taken as a commodity, not for the benefit of the communities, but for the benefit of often overseas interests who are making huge amounts of money out of it. Same with the intensification of some of our agricultural practices. Not that there aren't great regenerative examples out there, but it's the greed and the exploitation that we need to actually really counter and make sure that those who are using our water are treating it and paying for the consequences of their decisions. So not allowing privatisation is a big part of Three Waters reform. We only have to look at what happened in Havelock North, and for goodness sake, that was the heart of Hobson's pledge. So you couldn't get more right-wing redneck. And sadly, we have people who died, and you might have seen down in Wamaru recently, 40,000 people overall in 2020 had to live with boil water notices. There's been raw sewage running down the streets of Wellington, for goodness sake. So, the time something has to be done, like a message that was coming through at conference. The cost of doing nothing is just too high. And of course, everybody, it's a human right to have safe drinking water for all people, no matter where you live, whether you're on a marae, whether you've got a punawai down the road, whether you're on a major water system. So these are some of the key facts, and the facts are there. It's just, for whatever blooming reason, mainstream media is not tending to report them. They're tending to do the clickbait racist garbage. May we please have the next slide? Oops, that's my dog. Sorry if you can hear it. Quietly dying on the floor. Oh, kia ora. So, ko te ora te wai, ko te ora te tangata. This came out all the time. Sorry, last time he was in with Koe and he was poor old Koe. Anyway, but these are the basic principles for having end-to-end oversight of our waters, our drinking waters in particular, that not one person upstream can exploit it at the expense of those down here. So the basic principle is that all of us deserve safe, reliable and affordable water services that support good health and sustainable environmental outcomes. The three waters are our drinking water, which obviously is, well, some would say the most important, but our wastewater and stormwater are really important as well, because councils on ratepayer funding, etc., don't tend to have the money to fix their infrastructure, and it's not something that's very sexy for ratepayers. So to talk about some of these things as assets is actually just gaslighting. They're actually liabilities. You've got the Hanua Dam up in Taunaki Makaurau that's got a massive great crack in it that they haven't fixed. So in the meantime, we down here in Waikato are having 160 billion litres of water taken out of our oa to support Auckland, which is fine on one level, but they don't have the resources to fix the crack in their dam. So it's about our legacy decisions in the future. So thanks, Sharon. Could we have the Three Waters video now? Sharon?
Tēnā koutou katoa. All New Zealanders need safe, reliable drinking water, wastewater and stormwater services. We depend on these for health and well-being of our communities and our environment. For the last 2 decades, central and local government have discussed the challenges facing councils in continuing to deliver these services. Without action, the situation is only going to get worse. Following extensive analysis, it has become clear that New Zealand's Three Waters system is facing a significant crisis and will continue to do so without transformational reform. Latest estimates show that investment needed to replace, maintain and upgrade existing pipes and plants across New Zealand is up to $5 billion per year over the next 30 to 40 years. For many councils and their ratepayers, these challenges are here right now. Others will have to confront them in the near future. Catching up on this alone, without reform, will be beyond the ability of most councils and communities. We need to work together and use our shared expertise to tackle these challenges so that our communities can afford these critical services into the future. Doing nothing would be irresponsible and reckless, given the overwhelming evidence of systemic and widespread problems. That is why the government has taken decisions to progress the reforms by creating 4 publicly owned water service entities. For these to be successful, we need all councils to participate. Our decision puts the collective interests of all New Zealanders first, to ensure all communities can access the benefits of these reforms. We're making these changes in a way that ensures our water networks continue to belong to the communities they serve. Our plan is for these professional entities to start in 3 years' time. We will continue to work with local government, iwi and industry to refine the finer details over the coming months and years. We want to ensure they achieve the best outcomes for all New Zealanders. These new arrangements will help build a highly skilled, innovative, professional workforce to deliver the right services for our communities. We know that this work must remain local. You can't lay a pipe in the regions from a desk in the city. The reforms will create 6,000 to 9,000 jobs and increase economic activity in our rural regions. These are complex challenges, but we can no longer afford to ignore them. Together, through the reforms, we can have safe, clean and affordable water for everyone in New Zealand, no matter where they live.
Kia ora. All right, next slide. Thank you very much, Sharon. Oh, here we go. Yes, so this little video, if you can hark back, this video was played actually earlier on. And this is about the Resource Management Reform Act, which is another big thing facing councils and government generally. So the big thing about this, so the Resource Management Act as it currently stands is going to be replaced by 2 other acts, and the whole kind of impetus for both is the protection and regeneration of te taiao. So in other words, how we plan our urban and environmental natural environments to make sure that they're there and sustainable and have everything people need for the future without destroying some of the natural environments. Of course, a huge part about this is that big mega trend that Kawe mentioned before, climate change, which of course is a global phenomenon. So the idea is we've got to get ahead of these reforms and change by design, not disaster. Some of the changes that are required for this are just too big to wait for the disaster. And we've seen this obviously this week. We've seen it in Australia. If you overlook at the states at the moment, they've got massive wildfires everywhere as well as floods. You know, in some ways, we could say we've left it too late already. We can't just wait for the next disaster. I don't know if you all heard, but it was only a few nights ago on the news, they talked about, that's my demographic, I still watch the news, sorry. But they talked about insurance. It's going to get to the stage very soon when some properties are going to be uninsurable. So ideas of managed retreat, etc. So the time, the legacy decisions, the holding the space for the next generation means actually starting to design what that change should look like and not just reacting to the next disaster. So the two acts that are going to replace, one is about the Natural and Built Environments Act. So how do we protect our environment and still have thriving communities that are healthy and flourishing for the people who live in them. So making sure that we don't just have urban sprawl, that we plan our cities as well to have good quality, warm, safe housing for all of the inhabitants. The other one is the Strategic Planning Act, and it's really cool to see because it is, like Koe's talked about too, it's something that comes naturally to Māori. Looking ahead, it's not just about the next 3 years or about the blueprint or the long-term plan for a particular council. It's regional. It's not just about my little patch. It's about saying, okay, how do all of these things connect and marry up into the future? So finally looking ahead. So some of those things, as I said, I've mentioned already, but so we're increasing those legacy decisions, having strategies around land use that aren't just ad hoc and, some people land banking and other people, putting this on usable land, etc. Increasing biodiversity, okay, and that includes, like Koe talked about before, the way we feed ourselves, the kinds of innovation that are going to be there in terms of the way we farm, the kinds of products and crops we and food sources we use. So some of the ideas at conference were things like vertical farming, which was quite amazing. So, there's no need, and organic farmers already knew this. So, for example, they talk about vertical, what's the word you use when cows eat stuff? Vertical grazing anyway. So they'll have willow trees and things. So cows will eat up, not just eat across. In this case, we had pictures of things like strawberries being grown and tomatoes all being grown vertically rather than using massive amounts of land. So there's that. There's the moves, and we're already seeing it, to more plant-based sources of protein as well as food, because it tends to be much better for the land for a start, and you can get much more out of it. There's much less intensification of input and much better quality of output. And decrease this idea of separation, of councils operating in their own little silos or communities seeing only themselves, exploitation, you probably worked out that that's one of my bandwaggers, not just exploiting for individual greed, but actually not only being able to make decisions where the impact socially are also taken into account, where the well-being of communities. Some of that we saw, Nanaya talked about as well, is just local jobs, bringing, the kinds of things that are going to impact on communities generally when some of these other reforms come through. And the sources of control, that this isn't about councils or central government dictating things to communities. It's about communities saying, well, actually, this is what would work for us. How can you support and enable us to get it to happen? Thanks, Sharon. Oh, thanks. She's just said breath. Yes, I don't do slowing down very easily. And this one is just an example because, like I said, there are 4 well-beings that we need to, and people in the sector are working towards. But one of them, which is really important, especially we know about the cost of living issues and things like that for many whānau, is the economic well-being. So, but what this is saying, and I've mentioned it before, this is about how do we have councils who enable and empower their communities and don't just deliver services and solutions. So this is a different kind of relationship, or in a different kind of role for councils, where they say, okay, well, look, who have we got out in our community that we're can better talk to? So it's about councils becoming facilitators and enablers rather than top-down decision makers. And I've said before too, because communities have amazing amounts of ideas and strengths and experience and expertise, and particularly in the realms of Te Ao Māori. If you want to know about how the wai works in this particular area, you go back to the hapu and they will tell you. So it's just so much more efficient, as well as being more effective, to draw on the strengths of communities and hapu iwi Māori. Regional development, the well-being that this could have for communities, and social procurement. I notice Kaui's gone off now, but this is his thing. He was very involved with Amotai. He worked for Amotai. So the whole idea that you need to first look at employing your own in a community and not contracting out to some big, major firm out in Taunaki who take off all the profits, but generally subcontract back. So again, it's about looking after our rangatahi, the trades, the apprenticeships, everything that's needed so that communities can prosper from an employment and economic point of view. The big thing is that, and I've said this before too, making sure that all decisions consider the social impacts of where the spending is going. It was really clear, of course, there are going to be trade-offs. We can't be all things to all people, but we really need, as councils and communities, to identify what we value. And value is more than just the cost. It's not just about the putia. It's about all the resources we have. And that's our people, our air, our water, our land, everything. And we can't just take from our current resources for current benefits without looking at the long-term impacts. One of the people from the local government commission, or one of the industry people, said not every project to achieve a particular outcome is actually a good project. So it's not about going down one line. It's about looking at all the possibilities and choosing the best for the situation. The wera was put out, the 3 big partai to ask: do the benefits outweigh the costs? If of the projects we're looking at, how do we prioritise our resources? So these are This involves kōrero, it involves engaging communities, involves lots of people coming from different perspectives and coming up with the best answer, not just someone in a council office making a decision on a piece of paper. And then it's about how do we actually execute projects that get the best outcomes. Okay, Kawi, I think you're on now.
Kapai. All right, next. Look, I'm just going to quickly kind of touch on this. So we are kind of nearing the end of tonight's live stream series. But again, for those of you who are considering standing, these are just some of the serious challenges ahead of councils. And I know we've largely touched a lot on them this evening, but maybe just to kind of recap on some of them. So one, actively promoting Māori interests, protecting the natural environment, and of course, in the previous slides, Kirsty has shared a number of, I guess, also different changes that will happen. Adapting to climate change, again, I refer back to many of not only some of the local experiences that we've had, i.e. up in Port Waikato and the like, but many of what's happening overseas. Tackling housing affordability. So, of course, housing is a massive issue that crosses all regional and district borders, from housing affordability, from housing intensification, from, building papakainga and the like, lifting performance of essential infrastructure. So, of course, when it comes to councils, infrastructure itself is a massive part of what council has involvement in. So with that in mind and considering all of those, obviously if you are standing for council year, part of this is around you consolidating all of that and putting together what are the key issues that you're going to look to stand in council. And so what some of the things that you should consider is, what do your communities want to hear about? How do I show my involvement in some of these kaupapa? And so we've often shared some examples of Henewai Ormsby, and she's really led from the front in means of some of the revitalisation projects, some of the replanting projects that she stood on in the earlier part of her campaign, and she's followed that through. So just think about some of the key things that you are going to get yourself involved in, and not just kind of being a hearsay talk person, but actually being a kanohi kitea out in the community as well. What have I done already to help resolve some of these issues? So again, if you are looking to stand in council, often it's good to be able to hang some of your campaign on some of the issues you've already stood on or you've represented in the past. So consider and think about some of that. And of course, what will I do moving forward? So what are the things, what are the solutions? What are some of the active opportunities that you're going to look to pursue if and when you are elected into council? And of course, when it comes to promoting yourself and creating your platform, you need to be able to clearly articulate to people as to why should people vote for you. What difference are you going to make opposed to the other incumbent or someone else who's running for council? Kapai, next slide. And look, so I just, this is no particularly kind of promo of anyone, but we just really wanted to kind of give an example of some of the candidates who are looking to stand this year. But again, kind of just really succinct stuff. And one thing that we've been really impressed with this particular candidate is, just kind of being out into the community, doing kind of drop videos in different parts of his community, and also just kind of talking to some of the strengths of what that community brings, and also what he hopes to enhance as a result if he is elected into council. But yeah, just really want to mahi to you, Dan. And our next slide, I think, is Moko. Yes, again, look, okay, we're often kind of referring or promoting Moko, but again, Moko is another a standing candidate. Well, he's actually already in the Whā district Far North District Council as a councillor there, but he's actually standing for mayor. But again, just a really good example of some of the mahi that he's been doing, from printing T-shirts to activating his community to getting some key champions in behind him, from coordinating volunteers, you know. And one of the keynotes that I want to make is that if you are looking to run for council, you know, it is no sweet run, whānau. Like, you have to be prepared to actually get out and work. And yep, part of it is you getting out into the community, and as I mentioned earlier, kind of dropping some videos and talking to some of the strengths, some of the opportunities that you hope to bring and enhance as a result of you being elected. And then all tied into that is you being able to kind of put your stump speech together, being able to, you know, do media press conferences and, you know, and the like. And so it is a lot of mahi. But the hope for us too is that over the course of these 6 series that we've been able to kind of touch on some key points and provide for you some key tips. And look, just quickly again, as Kirsty mentions, nominations do close on the 12th of August. And so we've been really, really impressed with those who have put their name forward and who are looking to stand, particularly here throughout the Waikato region. It's really cool to see some of the candidates who are putting their hands up, not only in the general seats, but also not only in the Māori wards, but also in the general seats. And we want to encourage you to come forward, and especially those who haven't let us know yet that you are looking to stand. Please reach out and let us know. We'd love to get in behind you to support your campaign in any way. But by all means, we have all these live streams, and hopefully there'll be some good tips and resources and tools for you to draw from. But yeah, again, for those of you who live in the far north, please feel free to check out Moko for Mayor and his social media websites. That'll be awesome. Okay, next slide. Okay, so up and coming. So so we have our Hui a Hapuri workshop, which is our community workshops. We're looking at the 28th of August, which is a Sunday. Ideally, especially for those whānau who live in the Matamata Piako District region, we hope that you can come and join us. And actually, we are still looking for some candidates to stand in the Matamata Piako District Council. So by all means, please make sure that you reach out. More importantly as well, we have our Maangai Taunaki a Tinana Wānanga, which is on Tuesday the 16th of August. It will be held at, currently it will be held at Almairo Pa. But that's going to be a really, really cool event. We've got a number of key panelists who will be joining us that evening. So they are current councillors, and we will also have some community board members who will come and actually just share some of their experiences. And so for those of you who are vying for a seat on local council, I encourage you to come along, particularly to that event. And yes, Kai is always kind of front and center, so we have some really good Kai there for the evening. And yeah, so that particular kaupapa is making moko puna decisions, and it's Māori champions and local government. So that's kind of really the pitch line or the kaupapa for the evening. So we will not only be showcased, it'll be an opportunity for all of the candidates who are looking to stand both in the general seats and the Māori seats to actually meet one another. Because I remember what is good when you are running for, thank you Moko, yes, we look forward to seeing you there. What we have seen across in previous local elections is actually it's always good when you can meet you know, some of the other councillors who, one, are not only looking to stand in your own district or region, but some of the ones who are looking to stand in the other councils. But part of this as well is about creating a collective action, you know, and everyone kind of having the opportunity to collaborate, to be able to bounce off one another, share some of your experiences, both from a tuakana perspective, so those who are incumbents or who have been or are in council, and those candidates who are looking to stand in this particular council. So we want to forge and enhance that and encourage and foster that a little bit more. And so the hope for that evening is that it'll provide for you the chance to be able to meet some of your wider colleagues. And then following that, we will, again, similar to tonight, on the 30th of August, we will have another live stream, and that will be particularly focused on campaigning, not campaigning.
Sorry.
All good. Okay, next slide. Oh, okay. Yep, that's us. Again, look, whānau, there is no excuse for not, you know, having any of our detail thing. We often share this at the end of all of our slides, but by all means, if you want any of these resources or you want access to anything, please make sure you email myself or Kirsty. All of these live streams, and this is now the 6th session, and we've done some other series, so Taiki, we've done a number of different other kaupapa. I feel like we've been doing this for too long now. I can't remember everything. But you can access all of these on our YouTube channel, or else you please feel free to check out our Facebook pages. So Taurikura New Zealand, Mana Tangata Mana Maangai. So sorry, we're both on Facebook and Instagram. And lastly, please, if you don't know whether or not that you are on the, if you need to update your the electoral roll, please make sure that you do that. You can do that online. Actually, there are different ways of doing that, but please, probably the easiest way is just to go online. Today, I actually assisted one of my work colleagues to do that, and she was able to do that just, you know, within as little as 5 minutes. But again, especially to you candidates. Now, look, we have our inside little intel across some of these local councils, and so we know, you know, and plus they kind of release some of the information as to who's kind of been putting their hands up. So we know those of you who haven't put your nomination forms in. So make sure that you get those nomination forms in, because the biggest threat to our local democracy are incumbents going in unopposed. And so we want to make sure that whānau, you know, that for those who are looking to stand, that you're not giving it in at the 11th hour and then finding out that there's a mistake on your nomination form. Trust me, and it happens often, in the last local elections, there are a number of people that did that and weren't able to stand because they had misprints or grammar issues or all kinds of things on their nomination form. So please make sure you get those nomination forms, and make sure you let us know, because we'd love to get behind you and support you alongside your campaign. Look, just in closing, just really want to thank you. We have gone a little bit over time this evening, but that is because we started a little bit late with all these technical issues. In saying that, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking, and again, just really want to mihi to our guest speaker this evening. I could honestly have listened to you all night, Toni. Just really appreciate your whakaaro, your gems, your insights, your feedback, your experience, and I really hope that we can bring you back on here, if not kind of soon, post the elections, when you are elected into your new into council in the Maaori Ward. So just really want to mihi to you, e te tuahine, and thank you so much for giving up your time this evening. All right, so that concludes our 6th session of our Maangai Taunaki series. So from me to you and from Kirsty, me to you, we just really want to thank you all. Thanks, Sharon, for helping us with the tech. Yes, was there anything else, Kirsty, that I've forgotten?
No, but I just said on our little text thing, Tony, come on the 16th, we'll feed you, we'll put you up.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
yes, yes. Actually, that would be really awesome, Tony. We will. Okay, so that's us. So I will now mako e whakakapi tēnā o tātou hui. Nō reira, tēnei te tukumihi atu kia koutou. Me koe hoki, Jacqueline, kia ora. Okay. Me no tata kia tau, kia tata katoa, te ata whai o tō tata ari kia ihu karaiti, me te aroho o te atua, me te whiwhina taitanga ki te wairua tapu, ake, 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 āmine.
Pōmare.
Āmine, pōmare.